Hey everyone, my name is Michael Coker and I'm the mayor of the City of Mulberry. And today we're going to talk about Mulberry's budget, money, and how funds flow into the city. So if you're one of those accounting type and you love hearing about numbers and budgets, this is the podcast you want to listen to. So stay tuned. One of the biggest questions I get asked is, how does Mulberry function without a property tax? How's that even possible? They just don't understand how a city can operate without having a physical property tax. But what many people don't understand is that there actually is many funding sources that a city receives that has nothing to do with a millage rate or a property tax. And so Mulberry is completely funded just from these other sources. And to be clear, these are other sources that our area was already paying to Gwinnett County prior to Mulberry being created. So these are not new fees, new taxes. These are items that you were already paying that now go to the City of Mulberry instead of going to Gwinnett County. So we're going to talk a little bit about those in detail. We're going to talk about where the money comes from in Mulberry, but also what expenses are paid and where does the money go. And so we're going to start by talking a little bit about some of the revenue sources. There's a lot of them, so we're only going to go over the main highlights. But so far, the City of Mulberry has been able to receive their funds through maybe 3 to 4 primary revenue streams. The first one is called vehicle ad valorem taxes. And so when you go purchase a car, you might know that in the state of Georgia, when you buy a brand new car, there's a certain amount that you pay for vehicle ad valorem taxes. Well, a certain percentage of that gets remitted to the county and the cities based on various factors, like where you live, various items there. And so those funds, so when you are somebody who, say, in the City of Mulberry ultimately purchases a car, a certain percentage of those ad valorem taxes flow back to your local jurisdiction. Well, when there was no city, our local jurisdiction, we were in unincorporated Gwinnett County. And so those funds would flow to Gwinnett County. But once we were created, those ad valorem taxes will actually flow from the Georgia Department of Revenue through the county tax assessor's office and then to the City of Mulberry. So that's been one of the primary sources. So, keep buying those cars, keep continuing to make vehicle purchases, because that is one of our primary funding sources for our city. And the great thing is like I said, this was money that was going to Gwinnett County before, but is now being able to kept here locally. The second major source of revenue for us is what's called permit fees. So let's say you're somebody who wants to start a business and you need to maybe build out your kitchen of your restaurant. Or let's say you're somebody who wants to build a new neighborhood. You pay the municipality or the city a certain amount for what are called permit fees. And so this has been the second kind of major aspect of funding for the City of Mulberry and how we basically receive money. And so when these permit fees are paid, again, in the past, these permit fees were paid to Gwinnett County, but now they're basically paid to the City of Mulberry. We conduct the permitting, we conduct the inspection, and we also get to keep those permitting fees. So that's one of those aspects where it's kind of dependent, right? It's dependent on how much development you have going on, how many businesses you have opening. And the lucky thing that we have in Mulberry is a lot of people want to live here, and a lot of people want to start businesses here. And so we have these permit fees that continue to consistently flow in. People who want to not only, build a new house, but also maybe update their existing house and any permit fees that are required for that. And so these things are constantly flowing into the city and are another major source of revenue for us. The third that we've already received are what are called occupational taxes. And occupational taxes are basically taxes that businesses pay to continue to operate within our city. And again, these were amounts that these businesses were already paying to Gwinnett County that were getting sent to Lawrenceville, to the central office in the county, but now are paid directly to Mulberry. So that's the third major aspect. And again, those taxes were the same as what those businesses would have paid to Gwinnett for this first year. They would continue to be what they are, so there was no increase. The difference is the money is kept locally now instead of being sent off to Gwinnett. And so those are three of the main revenue sources that we've received so far. There's also revenue sources that we expect to continue to receive in the future. For example, under SB 138, which was a new Senate law that was passed, we are entitled to receive our portion of the insurance premium fees. Now, insurance premium fees are something that are collected by the state and then are remitted back to local jurisdictions. So when there's a new insurance policy that's issued, a certain percentage of that, again, this has been around for years and years and years, decades and decades, a certain percentage of what you pay in your insurance premium goes to the state insurance commissioner and then is remitted back to cities and municipalities. That is typically paid around October, is usually the time period, so that will be another major source of revenue that we expect will come into the city and will help fund our operations. And so it's taken a great team at great staff. Jamie Palmer, our city manager, is doing a phenomenal job, who understands the timeline of these revenues, right? Because obviously when you're a municipality, for example, occupational taxes are due in February. Insurance premium fees come in October. They all come in at various points throughout the year, so it takes really detailed budgeting, really conservative financial policies to make sure that we continue to maintain what is needed throughout the duration of the year, given that these funding sources come in at random times. And so those insurance premium fees we would expect to be coming in sometime in October, and that would be another source of revenue for the city. Now, there's others as well. Eventually, the city will receive what's called LMIG funds, which are basically funds from the state of Georgia to fix roads and to fix various aspects of that. That's something that the city ultimately may take on in the future and then would be entitled to receive those funds. There's other funding sources, certain SPLOST funds maybe in the future, other aspects of revenue that come into cities that continue to fund those operations. Things like stormwater fees, right? Stormwater fees, that's one of the services that Mulberry plans to take over eventually. Stormwater fees are another fee that will come into the city and will continue to fund those operations. And so you have all these fee sources, all these funds that come in. And the great thing is when Mulberry was envisioned and created by our members of the state legislature, what they did is they ultimately did a feasibility study, a financial feasibility study, and ultimately determined that this city can be completely successful only with these fee revenues. And so there is no need to charge a property tax because our area, the funds and the fees that come in are sufficient to fund and to fully manage our operations without ever having a property tax. And so that's where we get our funding. Those are some of those examples of funding sources where we, as the city of Mulberry, will continue to receive those funds. They'll continue to come in, and then through diligent budgeting, diligent fiscal policy, we'll make sure that those are spent in a responsible way so that we can continue our operations most effectively and in a way that's most respectful to you, our constituents. And so that's how we get our revenue in the city of Mulberry without any property taxes. And so that's kind of an explanation. Well, where does the money go? Where does the city spend their money? And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that in our first year of what some of our biggest expenses are, some of our where we expect to need to spend money in the future. Now, cities in the city of Mulberry, we took over 3 services. We took over planning and zoning, permitting, and then ultimately we plan to take over stormwater management. Now, these different services obviously cost money. This is not something where these services can be performed for free. And so what we did in the city of Mulberry is we privatized a lot of these services. So we ended up during the transition team in the city of Mulberry, those individuals put out what's called an RFP, basically a request to companies that, hey, if you want to provide service to the city of Mulberry, can you give us a quote, an estimate, and a proposal that will show the services that you'd provide and the cost. They ultimately made their recommendations of what companies should be selected, And then ultimately the council decided to select the individuals or the corporations that were recommended. And so we have these contractors who come in. For example, we have CKH is a contractor that does finance and administration. And so they handle all aspects of the city's finances, bookkeeping, audit requirements, all those aspects. They handle that. And so we pay them a monthly fee. We pay them a monthly rate to provide that services. Same goes for CPL, Clark Patterson Lee. They handle all aspects of permitting, all aspects of community development. And so again, we pay them a monthly fee to provide that private service. And so these are all services that they will continue to provide for those expenses. And then ultimately, when we take over stormwater management, that will be provided by a third party as well that will come in and take and address any of our stormwater issues using those stormwater fees. And so the primary expenses that we have are to pay these contractors, right? To pay these contractors to handle all aspects of our city. And the great thing is when you have a private company doing these services, if in any manner or in any capacity you're unhappy with the quality of the service that they're providing, we can then step in and say, yeah, we don't want you to do this anymore, okay? And so it kind of gives you this benefit, right? That there's, in my opinion, the quality of the service is substantially better because at any minute the city can step in and say, you're not doing a good job. There's a termination requirement in the contract, but we could seek these services elsewhere. And so because of that, what we're hearing from our constituents is that the quality of the service from these private companies is substantially better than what they were getting from Gwinnett County. And that's no dig at Gwinnett County or government employees. They're working hard. They're doing their job. But the reality is the way we were able to make it leaner using these private companies with experts in those particular fields, I think we were able to accelerate some of the processing time, the permitting, those kind of items using these private companies. And so that's the primary source of where our money goes, where the expenses are, is through those contractors. Now we have other, expenses as well. We have a city attorney we pay. We have city managers, a couple city employees that we pay, just basically to cover our day-to-day operations. Obviously, we have a city hall that we rent, which is on Tarrant Trace, across from Duncan Creek Park. If you've ever been there or want to attend one of our city council meetings, these are other kind of monthly type expenses that we incur. But ultimately, we have been successful thus far in being able to operate our city in a very fiscally conservative, lean manner. And so our goal is to continue that success, to continue that financial being as lean as we possibly can, being as conservative as we possibly can fiscally, and then ultimately continuing to deliver services in the best manner possible. And so that's kind of a basic overview in how city budgeting and money flows. Those are the different revenue sources. Those are the various expenses that we pay. And that's basically a peek behind the curtain on city operations. So if you have any questions or if you want to talk more about it, I'd encourage you to reach out to City Hall. We'd be more than happy to discuss it with you and explain any question you might have or detail that you don't understand. But if you like getting these behind the curtain updates about the city and learning more about municipal governments and how they work, like and subscribe to this podcast. I'll keep them coming. So far, you guys have been great. The comments have been so kind. I appreciate every one of them. But you can continue to learn more about the city, more about Mulberry by following us and liking and subscribing. So thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.